Only 28% of sales reps hit their quota, and most sales leaders have no idea why. They blame the sales reps, they blame the product, and they blame the market. But what if the real problem is much simpler and way more uncomfortable? What if your team is just not selling the right way?
Why does the customer have to buy? Why do they have to buy from you? How are you differentiated? Nobody really understands specifically what it is, and if you ask again 4 or 5 different people, you'll get 4 or 5 different answers.
John McMahon has seen it all. He's a 5-time CRO, including companies like Bladelogic, PTC, and BMC, and sat on the board of giants like MongoDB, Snowflake, and Sprinklr. He's the author of the book The Qualified Sales Leader and the man behind MEDDICC, one of the most widely used qualification frameworks in B2B sales.
So depending upon where they are in the organization, you speak a different language. If they don't have the answers to those questions, you're speaking to the wrong person. You haven't set the decision criteria. How can you possibly say that you have a champion?
But what really makes John unique is his obsession with building world-class sales teams from scratch.
First, you might look at some different metrics. As if I shake them at 2 o'clock in the morning and say, tell me step by step what this use case is.
In this episode, we talk about what separates great sales teams from average ones and why most sales reps are trained to fail from day one.
Yes, you'll sell, but you'll sell little chicken shit deals. You'll sell 50K deals, 25K deals. You'll never be the sales rep that is going to be at the top of the organization talking about multi-million-dollar deals.
You will hear how John diagnoses broken sales organizations in minutes, why top sellers anticipate instead of react, and how to turn MEDDICC from a checklist into a competitive advantage. You built and led 5 sales organizations as a CRO. You've firsthand seen what makes a sales team win or fail. When you enter today, or you would enter a completely new sales organization, what would be the red flags that would tell you that this team is losing more deals than they should?
Well, first, you might look at some different metrics. So you might look at what the average deal size is for new customers, what's the average deal size for existing customers, how many new logos are they getting every quarter, and how many are they getting for the last previous quarters? What's the average productivity per sales rep? Is it really low? So are they only doing like 500,000 or 600,000 per sales rep, which means they're not really productive. So you really want to get that productivity up over, at least over $1 million for a subscription business, and definitely into the 1.2 or $1.4 million value. And then you can look at the sales cycles, like how long is it taking them to sell? And then you just you ask very basic questions like the 3 whys. Why does the customer have to buy? Why do they have to buy from you? Meaning, how are you differentiated? And then why do they have to buy now? And usually if they can't answer those 3 questions, then they really don't know what their ICP is, the ideal customer profile. They don't really understand the persona that they're selling to. They don't really truly understand the pains and the magnitude of those customer pains and how to justify, a purchase of a significant size. So you can start to see pretty quickly whether or not they're selling the right way or selling the wrong way.
Before we continue with the conversation, I have one little favor to ask you. If this conversation brings value to you, can you please hit the subscribe button down below so we can help to reach more sales reps and sales leaders like you every week? Thank you. So you mentioned it's asking them the three whys. Why should they buy from us? Why should they buy also from? Why should the customer change? Well, which problems does the customer have? What is the ICP? And what specific questions would you ask them as well to qualify for you if they're using methodology, if they're using processes? What would be the first questions you would ask a sales leader or a sales rep when you go into a new sales organization, just to get a feel for, where is the biggest lever that you can turn?
Well, a lot of times they use terminology that is not prevalent throughout the entire sales force. So if I go into a QBR and I'm invited into a QBR, sometimes they'll throw around terms like economic buyer, gatekeeper, champion, coach, all of that. So I'll say, hey, I'm new to this organization. Do you mind if I ask a question? Can you tell me what the word champion means in this organization? What does economic buyer mean in this organization? And what you find is that there's different if you ask 3 or 4 different people, you get 4 different answers. So already they're using, the same terminology, but different definitions. So they're literally talking past each other. So that's the first thing. You got to find out if they're communicating the right way. Second thing is, do they have a sales process? And when you ask to see the sales process, you can say, okay, tell me what, let's say stage 2 of this sales process. What happens? What are the different steps in that sales process or in that stage? And now to get out of that stage, what's the exit criteria? And what you'll find is that they can't really articulate. Here are the specific steps that you have to take in that stage. And here's the exit criteria, to allow you to go to the next, basically open the gate and go to the next stage.
Yeah.
You'll find that, yeah, we have a sales process. Yes, we have a qualification methodology, but nobody really understands specifically what it is. And if you ask, again, 4 or 5 different people, you'll get 4 or 5 different answers. So they're not all on the same page. So it's almost like having a football team or a hockey team, and they're calling a play, but you believe that the play, you have to be in one position on the play, and I think I have to be in a different position on the play. We're just not communicating as a team. And every team, every sports team you know about, whether it's soccer, football, hockey, they all have a playbook. And people have to memorize the playbook and know where are they supposed to be on that play and what are they supposed to execute. And when you can't articulate that, whether it's sales or sports, you're not on the same team. You're just a bunch of individuals, skating around the ice or running around the soccer field.
Yeah. So you mentioned basically 2 things. It's having the same vocabulary, having the same understanding for the same words, what things like champion or economic buyer actually mean, not having different definitions, but also not having just a sales process somewhere in your intranet, but actually living it. And I think you very often mention that it's so important to listen and be present, and communication is about understanding the other human being. Now, if I have 2 people that have a different definition of champion, you're running into different directions. What I also often observe is that companies have written out playbooks and scripts and discovery questions, and they say we are using MEDDICC, and those are the questions you need to ask to use MEDDICC. But when you actually go into the organization and you speak with the sales reps, they're not using it, or everyone is using it in a completely different way.
Correct.
So they have something written down. They have a playbook, but it's basically knowledge. It's not used in reality. So any advice on how you actually implement methodology, implement the sales process, so it's actually also getting used by the sales rep and not being buried down in an intranet in some PDFs?
Yeah. Well, if you were the brand new leader, first of all, I think you have to train everyone on your sales process, qualification methodology, ICP, what discovery questions you ask. And you have to train them really well. And then you also have to now try to get some wins. If you're brand new to the sales force, I'd have to find, a number of sales reps that are willing to buy in. And then I have to help them get wins. And then I let them promote the wins by saying, hey, because I followed the sales process, because I implemented this qualification methodology, because I knew how to ask the right questions on discovery and be able to build these metrics into a cost justification, I was able to get this multi-million-dollar deal. And you let them talk about it, and then other people start to buy in.
Yeah, let's speak about this for a while, because you mentioned one thing, that it's important for the sales rep to feel and see results when he's applying something. If I do something, I don't see it works, I stop using it. If we speak about MEDDICC sales process qualification whatsoever, you mentioned we need to train the sales reps when you go into the organization. What would be the first things that you would train so you can give them the fast experience of success, this fast experience? Oh, actually it works. Oh, I do this and that and I close a deal. What would be the biggest lever? What is the biggest leverage that I can teach to a sales rep so he experiences success very fast?
Well, first, again, it goes back to the ICP.
Okay.
So you have to make sure that they truly understand the persona that they're selling to, how that person's measured, so that you can sell to that person and speak their vocabulary. So depending upon where they are in the organization, you speak a different language as you go up the organization. You have to speak their language. So if I'm talking to the CEO, I'm only talking about revenue, profitability, and risk. I'm not talking about anything else because he doesn't care about anything else. As I come down just underneath that CEO, I might talk about engineering productivity, engineering costs, time to market, those types of things. That is their language, but it definitely affects the CEO on revenue, profitability, and risk. So you have to first make sure that they understand who they're selling to and how that person's measured. Then they have to know the use case for that person and for their product cold. They have to know it like as if I shake them at 2 o'clock in the morning and say, tell me step by step what this use case is. Each step in that use case process, what is it? They have to be able to articulate that. Now, where are the pains in that process? Okay, now they understand all that, and they understand it cold. Now, what are the questions that you're going to ask that you're going to be able to extract? It's like a good lawyer that leads the witness. Good lawyers never put anyone on the stand without basically knowing what your answer is going to be, right? So they study you, they study your whatever's, your background, whatever the crime you've committed, whatever it is. They study that so cold, they're asking very precise questions, right? And that's what a great salesperson does. They already know the answers to the questions, and they're asking those to extract that out of the customer and get the customer to admit to that. And once you now have that information and the metrics around how much that pain is for the customer, whether it's preventing them from getting revenue, it's affecting their profitability, it's affecting the risk of their installed base or their databases. Then from there, you can put that into a cost justification, and now you can try to extract a lot more value, from the customer as far as the price that they pay, but they get a lot more value out of your product because now they'll be able to implement it and, change those things. So really, you have to know, who your customer is, what their pains are, and you have to know all that stuff cold. And it's only if you know it cold can you go in there and ask those questions. Most salespeople go in and they just talk about their product, and they're hoping by me talking about features and functions of my product that the customer will connect the dots from what I just told them about a feature to their pain. Then they think that the customer is going to figure out how much value that gives them. And then the customer is going to cost justify it. And the customer is going to go try to steal the budget. That's not the way it works. Really good salespeople do all that work for the customer because they understand their use case, their persona, and who they're selling to.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
That makes total sense. You reminded me of a great ice hockey analogy right now, because you said that a lawyer that is interrogating you he knows what you will say because he studied you. He knows if he asks that question, you will probably answer this or that.
Right.
And I think it's a great analogy for sales, because a professional salesperson is not just asking random questions, but he knows your persona. He knows you are a CFO in the automotive industry. He understands the pains you have. He understands, or she understands, the problems that the product can solve for you, the ICP. He understands the business impact of those problems. He understands the root causes of those problems. And based on that, he very precisely designs questions where he already knows more or less what the answer could be. And back to the ice hockey analogy, Wayne Gretzky always said, I'm not skating, I'm skating not where the puck is, but where the puck is going.
Where the puck is going.
So they already anticipate,
right,
and they are not reacting to the customer. I think it's a bold statement, but I think losers react and professionals anticipate. They know what will happen, and they prepare themselves. And in a sales context, not in an ice hockey context, they don't ask the question, next question on the checklist, but they ask the next question to understand more deep what the customer actually meant with a specific thing that he said, to really drill down, understand what is the implication of the pain, how can it be quantified, what did they maybe try to solve it already, what is the root cause, etc., etc. So really, this anticipation is key, and if you want to anticipate, you need to have done your homework before.
Yeah, right.
So I think that that's really...
Well, also, when you know that stuff cold, you actually know whether or not you're speaking to the right person. Because if the person can't answer those questions, or they give you answers that are not based upon the use case, and you know that use case so well, and you've sold into that use case in 3 or 4 other companies, so you know what the predicted answers are supposed to be. You can tell whether or not you're speaking to the right customer and whether or not they care about it. If they don't have the answers to those questions, you're speaking to the wrong person.
Absolutely, yeah. But it also comes down to training salespeople and developing sales organizations, having a structure, having a playbook. Now, from my research, at least, when I researched you for that for this conversation with you, you seem to have a big passion for developing sales teams, developing sales organizations, and I think you even mentioned something like, if you want to get what you want in life, you need to help other people to get what they want in life.
Right.
If you would build a completely new sales organization from scratch today, with a whiteboard in front of you, what would be the first things that you would do to really set this team up for success?
Yeah, basically the same stuff that we've already talked about.
ICP,
Yeah,
use
ICP,
cases.
use case, persona, and train them. And then, like I used to think about, if my salespeople have to think, then they're not, to your point, they're not anticipating. They're not really in the customer conversation, right? I have to know, like in any sport, I have to basically react to whatever happens to me on the field or on the ice. In sales, for me to be in the moment, in the customer conversation, I already have to know. And if I don't know and I'm thinking too much about what I'm going to say, or I don't understand what they meant by that, or those types of things, then I'm not really in the moment. I'm not really listening. Because when you really know and you're really listening, I can basically now start to ask really questions off of what you say. But if I don't know and I'm thinking too much because I don't understand the use case, I don't understand their persona, I don't know what questions to ask, I don't understand how they're measured, then I'm not in the customer conversation.
Yeah. It's still so difficult, especially for new sales reps, to really get that right. But even for senior sales reps or seasoned sales reps, because everyone is kind of reinventing the wheel. No one is actually following a certain standard. And then it's really tough to scale an organization if everyone is doing whatever he wants to do. How can you increase productivity, to your point?
Right.
Right. So
right.
it's actually, it's just not working.
Well, that's where, when everything's down to a process, and process, people kind of get, a little scared when they hear the word process. But process, you need a little bit of process. That's a balance between not building a bureaucracy, but also and maintaining flexibility so people can do what they want to do. But you also need a process with different steps and stages so that when something's going wrong, I can understand what's going wrong. Just like, sports teams have a playbook, and the playbook says that different players are going to be in different positions on the field and this is how we're going to execute. This is the knowledge that you need to have about the play. You need to have memorized the playbook. And here's the skill that you need to be able to execute when the puck comes your way or the ball comes your way. This is what you need to do, right? When people don't know and they don't have the skill set because they haven't been trained, and knowledge I can give to you if you're very intelligent. You'll absorb knowledge really quickly. But skills take time. If I want to be great at shooting a puck, if I want to be great at kicking a ball, if I want to be great at throwing darts, I have to decide that I'm going to do that hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times over. Yeah. So it's up to leaders to train their people effectively, not just give them the knowledge of how to play the game, but actually, what to do when they are in the game as far as the skill set. Yeah. And that takes time. And a lot of people don't want to put the time in. Yeah. As leaders. They want to say, I trained them last year on this and they should know that. No, it takes a lot of repetition.
Yeah. I see 3 difficulties with that. First is that, I don't know what you think, but in a lot of sales organizations, salespeople are trained by sales managers that have never actually sold, or they never have been successful, or they never learned MEDDICC from someone that actually applied MEDDICC and they think they know MEDDICC. Then they are teaching them something that actually is wrong. That's the first thing. The second thing is that sales managers, RDs, RVPs, whatever, they are swamped with administrative tasks, with bureaucracy, they are turning to CRM disc jockeys instead of actually training salespeople.
Well, that's what they tell themselves.
Yeah.
But, that means they don't have the right priorities. Your priorities have to be, it's not about you. It's not about the bureaucracy. It's all about your salespeople and your team. Just like a great sports coach, it's all about the team and it's not about the coach. If the team is successful, the coach will be successful. And you have to put all your effort into the team.
Yeah, and you need to trust the process and you need to have the patience. And I feel sometimes in today's world, people are very impatient. We want to have this instant gratification, the instant reaction. We want to click on the button and get the pizza ordered to our house. But in sales, in skills, in any excellence area of life, it doesn't work like that. You need to hone your skills. You need to do mistakes. You need to do one shot 1,000 times until you actually mastered it. So that's definitely that. Let's speak about MEDDICC a little bit. So
okay, let's go.
Let's speak a little bit. I give you a John McMahon quote. I hope I get it right. So you said something around you can just slam MEDDICC into your CRM and expect magic to happen.
Right.
And MEDDICC is one of the most widely used qualification methodologies out there. A lot of people say
that's right. It's not a sales process.
A lot of people say it's a sales process.
I've heard that, and that's not that.
Yeah, exactly. So, and most salespeople and also sales teams, if you ask them, hey, do you use MEDDICC? Yeah, of course we use MEDDICC. But if you qualify further, you will find out that they are using it more as a checklist.
Yes.
And that they are actually not living it.
Right.
You say that MEDDICC is a GPS, a sales GPS.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you mean by that?
Well, let's use an analogy. Let's say that I'm going to drive from Boston to New York. And so I use Google Maps, and Google Maps basically outlines the exact way in which shortest distance that I should go from Boston to New York. So that's the same thing that you do in a sales process. It tells you all the different steps, all the different turns to go from talking to the customer originally all the way till you get a purchase order, right? Now, when I'm driving from Boston to New York, and I've been driving for about an hour, I might think, well, I'm near Hartford, Connecticut. I'm 20 miles outside. But then you look at your GPS and it says, no, you're 35 miles outside of Hartford, Connecticut. But then I pull into a gas station. I get some gas, I get a water, I get back on the road, and I don't know how to get back on the road. My GPS takes me all the way back to the highway and takes me back down towards New York. And the same thing with MEDDICC, it's a GPS or a qualification methodology of where are you today in the sales, right now at the sales process? What information do you have? What information don't you have? And helps you get back on track, just like after you got the water and the gas, you go back onto the highway. It helps you understand this is the information that I need, and these are the people I need to speak to in order to get to the next step. So you might have thought that you're in stage 3, step 2, but in reality, you're in stage 2, step 4 of the sales process. So it allows you to go back to understand your sales rep and you as a manager, specifically where you are, what information you have, what information you don't have, and how to get back on track.
Can you give a specific example so the listeners or viewers understand what you mean? Because I understand it. I understand the analogy with Google Maps. It's great. But specifically in a sales process, like a scenario with a champion, for example, or that you don't get to the EB, like how can MEDDICC help you as a GPS? Can you give a specific example of how it can bring you back on track in a sales process?
Well, first I might even ask the 3 whys before I go into MEDDICC. So I might ask the sales rep that's standing up and talking about their deal, tell me why the customer has to buy. And if they can't answer that question, there's no sense in asking any other questions. And now if they say why the customer has to buy, tell me why they have to buy from us, right? And from that, it tells me whether or not they have the decision criteria set. So tell me if they have to buy, what is the value driver, meaning, why they have to buy. And now tell me what is the criteria for them to buy. Have you locked down the criteria? Yes, show me. Can you show me a document that you send to the customer saying, here's where we've agreed on the criteria for a proof of concept, a proof of value, a benchmark, whatever you want to call that. And if they haven't done that, then they also can't justify, the purchase. Do you have the metrics of how much it's costing that customer in revenue, profitability, or risk, to basically the negative consequences of not solving this problem. So what happens if they do nothing? What's the consequences? What are the positive business outcomes if they do implement this solution? That's where you want to get them to. And if you're asking those basic questions, then you can kind of tell where they are.
Yeah.
You're still maybe in discovery, or you're in scoping. And maybe you're in stage 2, you're in scoping, but you still don't have the metrics. You can't build the cost justification. You can't, you haven't set the decision criteria. How can you possibly say that you have a champion? And why are you saying that you're trying to get a meeting with the economic buyer when you don't even know why they have to buy or why they have to buy from us? What are you going to talk to the economic buyer about?
Yeah. And I think this is the biggest issue that people have with MEDDICC, I think. Especially the ones that are not using it correctly, because they think it's a checklist. For example, let's say E for implicated or indicated pain, right? They ask, hey, so what's your pain? But that's not the question you should ask for MEDDICC. Or C, hey, are you the champion, or who is the champion? Or hey, E, economic buyer, who is the economic buyer? This is not how MEDDICC is used, and most people use it as a checklist. They go through the letters in a linear manner, and they go from M to C and think that they have applied MEDDICC. Right. But MEDDICC is much more than that. MEDDICC is understanding the 3 whys. Yeah. MEDDICC is understanding how to navigate a meeting with the champion, how to build with him maybe a 3-why document that he can bring to the economic buyer. It's much more than that. So what would be your advice for everyone that thinks he's using MEDDICC, but is actually using it as a checklist?
Well, first, let's go back. The letters can also go together, too. So if you're using it as a checklist, you don't understand how these things are all tied together. So one of the most famous questions that I like to ask was, okay, Jiri, so you're talking about deal ABC, right? Okay. How long have you been, and you tell me you have a champion. Okay. How long have you been calling on this account? I've been calling on it 6 months. Okay. How long have you had a champion? I've had a champion for 4 months. Have you met the economic buyer? No, you don't have a champion. There's no way you've had a champion for 4 months and you haven't met the economic buyer. It means you have a coach. So that's one way in which these letters or using it as a checklist is the wrong way. You don't understand the implications of what happens when you don't have one of these things and how it implicates the other one.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
That makes total sense. And my theory is that the more time passes, the more diluted MEDDICC becomes in the market, the more wrongly it gets used in the market.
Correct.
Because people are not learning it from someone that has actually applied it. So, and for me, MEDDICC is kind of this, it's a methodology, a qualification framework that is passed on from generation to generation, and that you learn it from a master that have actually applied it. I mean, at the end of the day, it originates back to you and maybe to Dick and a few other folks. And you have taught this methodology to other sales leaders. That's why you have a huge legacy of other RVPs, RD, CROs in the whole market. Mm-hmm. And they have learned MEDDICC from you. They've exactly known all the steps and questions to ask and how to use the letters intertwined. And they are spreading that excellence to their teams.
Yes.
But now, if I Google MEDDICC and I say, okay, great. I stands for indicated, implicated pain. C stands for champion. Great, it's a checklist. I just go through the checklist in my customer meeting, and now I'm using MEDDICC EPIA. But that's the wrong way to use it. And that's why I think if people like you are not longer in boards or actually training people in MEDDICC, then the quality of how MEDDICC gets applied will go down and down and down.
Yes.
Then the next consequence of that is that people will more and more think MEDDICC is not working because they're applying it wrong. And because they think it's not working, they will say, hey, it's no longer working and we need to have another sales methodology or qualification methodology. So maybe in 10 years, there will be no MEDDICC anymore because the excellence of actually applying it got lost with the people that have actually, created
it gets lost because of the explosion of software companies, right? You know, when I was at PTC, I think there were like 60 software companies in the world. And now there's 60 software companies in a 10 square block area of San Francisco. So it does get diluted because sales leadership has gotten diluted, right? Because there's just now hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of software companies. So of course, and now everybody's a sales leader and everybody's a CRO. And of course they didn't really, have the experiences and the scars of experience and the pains that they had to go through to truly understand, how do I really train my sales force? How do I implement discipline in the sales force around process and methodology so that I can scale this sales force and understand if something's going wrong, what's going wrong and why it's going wrong, and how to quickly fix it.
You know what struck me during this conversation so far? How often deals are lost not because of product or price, but because something critical was missed in the conversation. And that's exactly where tools like Kickscale come in. Kickscale uses AI to record, transcribe and analyze your sales meetings and shows you what really happened. What parts of MEDDICC were covered? Where did qualification fall short and which questions should you ask next time? It even syncs with your CRM and gives your reps real-time coaching so you don't just review calls, you actually get better with everyone. And the results speak for themselves. Teams using Kickscale see up to 27% higher win rates just by closing the gaps that are hiding behind plain sight. As a listener and viewer of the show, you get an extended free version with 20 recorded meetings absolutely for free. Check out the link in the show notes and get your access to Kickscale today. Let's get back to the episode. I mean, Andy White is doing a great job in, bringing more proficiency into the MEDDICC application. I'm sure you know probably Andy, right?
Sure, Andy White.
Yeah.
Sure.
So he's doing a great job with that. So if you listen to that, Andy, great,
all right.
Great job doing
Little
with
plug
MEDDICC.
for Andy.
Yeah. Still, with MEDDICC, there's a lot of criticism as well. So I'm coming from a German-speaking area, Germany, Austria, Switzerland, and before I jumped onto that recording with you, I've looked in my inbox and wanted to see what are the questions that my community or my audience would like to know, would like to ask you about MEDDICC. And one recurring theme, one recurring question was, okay, MEDDICC is now what, 20, 30 years old or something like that, 30 years old, yeah?
Don't try to age me.
Times have changed.
I think I'm still looking pretty good.
Yeah, you still, look at you. I think, I can't complain about your looks. Maybe we can ask my fiance sitting at the back.
Hey, Connie, all right.
Yeah, okay. So let's put it like that. It has it's out in the market for some time.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it gets diluted, which we talked about.
Diluted
because sales leadership has been diluted.
Exactly.
Right?
But most people say, and which is somehow true as well, the world has changed, sales has changed, companies are buying differently, buying processes have changed. And that's why, what is the next thing? How does MEDDICC need to adapt, or what is the next MEDDICC version 2? So what's your take on that?
Well, first of all, when you go to different countries in Europe, and I've lived in Europe twice, and obviously over the course of my career, I've had to manage people in every different country. And what's always funny is the people in a certain country will tell you, well, it's different here, John. It's just different here than it is in the US or anywhere else. And I'll say, well, that's interesting. How many other countries have you sold into? And they say, none. So then I ask them, well, then how do you know it's different? If you've only sold in Germany or Austria or the German-speaking part of Switzerland, you've never sold into France and Hong Kong and Tokyo and the United States and Canada and Mexico, Brazil, then how do you know it's different? Because at the end of the day, if you type in the annual report for any company in the world, on the first page, you're going to see three things. The CEO is going to talk about revenue, profitability, and risk. That's it. That's all they care about everywhere in the world. So it's not different everywhere in the world as far as what companies are trying to achieve. Now, with MEDDICC, I don't understand why people could say that it needs to evolve or it needs to be different, because don't you need to understand what the customer wants to buy? So you need to understand the criteria. Don't you need to understand the process that that customer is going to go through to buy the product? Like who's involved in each step of the process and what they do in each step of the process? Don't you need to build a cost justification to help the customer justify why they want to buy $2 million worth of your software? So you need to understand their pain. You need to understand the metrics around their process and their pain in order for you to build the cost justification. Without identifying the pain, the problem, the initiative, and without quantifying, what that pain is and the business benefits of it and the negative consequences of it, then you cannot build a cost justification. Now, if you're selling a product that everybody's always bought, storage or laptop computers, those are commodities. You don't need to justify it. But if I'm going to go sell a brand new product that the company's never bought before, I need to basically steal budget, because when I go into that company, there's no budget for what I do. So if I can't build a cost justification by understanding the I and the M and the criteria and the process, and who is the person that makes the ultimate decision, because the economic buyer is the person that has discretionary use of the funds. They are the only person that can decide, well, this is not in the budget, but it's such a powerful purchase, it's going to affect our profitability, our revenue, or our risk. Then I decide as the economic buyer to change the priorities in the budget. And only the economic buyer can do that. And if you can't do all the things we just talked about and identify the economic buyer and get them to agree that they're going to change the budget for this multi-million-dollar purchase, then yes, you'll sell, but you'll sell little chicken shit deals. You'll sell 50K deals, 25K deals, 10K deals. You'll never be the sales rep that is going to be at the top of the organization talking about multi-million-dollar deals. So yeah, if you think that it's aged and you don't need it, or you don't want to adapt and you don't want to learn and you don't want to try, sure, keep selling chicken shit deals. Keep selling 50K deals.
Yeah. And
good luck.
That's the consequence that you are selling chicken shit deals, that your deal size and the
Sorry about saying chicken shit.
That's fine. We won't get banned on YouTube, I hope, for that. So,
that's not a terminology in the German speaking.
Yeah, but it will.
Chicken shit.
No,
it translates well.
Yeah. We will find a translation for that for the captions, I'm sure. But your first answer to my first question was what are the red flags in a sales organization? You mentioned like half an hour ago. It's the deal size. If the deal size is, for example, small, right, then you see there is an issue with something. And MEDDICC helps you to push those big deals. And you've done that, or MEDDICC has done that also together with your help successfully in companies like Snowflake. I mean, no one was buying Snowflake back in the days. It was completely new. You need to find a product market fit. Who is the ICP? What is the propensity to buy? Which companies have the highest propensity to buy Snowflake? The same with MongoDB, in-house software building, velocity, fast time to markets needed, like gaming companies. So you need to have MEDDICC in place to be able to navigate through a complex sales process, especially if your product is new to the market, it's some innovation or whatever, because you're always stealing budget. And if you're stealing budget, you need to have much better structured methodological justification of why this customer needs to change, what is the negative consequence, why you are the best solution for his problem. So why us, for example, and then why now? Why should it be done today? What is the cost of inaction if you don't do it? Right?
But also, how do I train my sales reps if I don't have a sales process and I don't have a qualification methodology? So Jiri never can get to the economic buyer. I have to figure out why. So I have to understand, Jiri, are you asking the questions to uncover the pain? Are you asking the questions to develop the metrics around that so you can build a cost justification? Are you trying to influence the decision criteria? Do you understand the decision process? If I can't qualify where Jiri is in the sales process and why he keeps getting stuck at a certain step in a certain stage of the sales process, how can I train Jiri, on that play, just like a playbook that a sports team has. They have a playbook, everything's outlined. Here's what you need to know. Here's the skill set you need to execute. Okay, that's no different in sales. In every step of the sales process, in every step of it, I need to have a certain knowledge and a certain skill set in order to execute. As a leader, I need to understand, where is Jiri and why does he keep failing at this? Is it because he doesn't understand? He doesn't have the knowledge of what to do? Or does he not know how to do it? And what do I need to train him on and train my sales force on so that they can get through these steps? And that's how you use MEDDICC also.
Yeah.
It's not just the qualification methodology to understand where you are in the sales process, but also help train your sales reps.
And that's also a very important part that you mentioned that MEDDICC is not a sales process. You're using MEDDICC. We are using MEDDICC as a sales process. No, It's not a sales process. Your sales process is based on your individual product and product market fit and ICP. There is no one, single unified sales process that you can slam on every product. The sales process is always proprietary based on what you are selling. And on top of that, there's the qualification methodology like MEDDICC to help you navigate like the GPS through that sales process. So now
that's right.
Let's summarize. So
we're summarizing. All right.
Let's summarize this MEDDICC part because people were pounding me with questions yesterday on LinkedIn. Hey, ask John this and that, right? And there was a lot of skepticism around this MEDDICC topic, especially is it still applied, etc. The world has changed. So bottom line is MEDDICC still applies. MEDDICC still works. MEDDICC is still a valid qualification methodology. That's your opinion. Then maybe a different question.
Maybe I didn't explain it good enough if you say it's just my opinion.
No, I say I have the same opinion because I have used it over the last years and it brought me a lot of deals, a lot of success, and a lot of quotas as well. So I had that success experience with MEDDICC. So that's why I trust in MEDDICC. And my personal opinion is there are a lot of fake gurus out there. Everyone is a CRO, everyone is a sales trainer, everyone is a sales expert. And everyone wants to sell you the new framework. Everyone is coming out with the new sales framework.
Well, you bring up a good point, though. What you did, because you bought into MEDDICC and you understood how it works, then you didn't need your sales leader anymore to tell you where you were, in the process, right? You said you self-analyzed and understood, hey, I don't have this information. I haven't spoken to these people. So here's where I am in the sales process, and here's what I need to do next. That's when it's really powerful. Not because some CRO told you have to use it or because it's a checklist. It's when you can self-analyze where you are in the sales process and know specifically what you need to do next.
The self-reflection of a sales rep is one of the strongest traits that there is out there. But to self-reflect in a structured way, you need to have some type of methodology, a qualification methodology. And MEDDICC is nothing else than helping you to self-analyze your own deals. After you understood how MEDDICC works, and that it's not just letters in an acronym, but it's like a real system, a way of thinking, then you are able to spread your wings and fly alone. You don't need an RD or RVP to sit next to you in a meeting to help you sell, but you can self-analyze using MEDDICC where you are on the route to success, or not.
And it's a way for you to start to understand how to control a deal.
Yeah.
So in any sales process, there's only 3 people that can control a deal. The customer can control it, you can control it, or your competitor can control it. So in the beginning of a sales process, you need information from that customer, right? So they're in control of the sales process. Yeah. But if you do a good enough job, which we talked about, understanding the I, so you identify the pain, you grab the metrics because you understand the metrics. And now you start to formulate a decision criteria with the customer because you understand their pains and how that, your product is uniquely differentiated and can help solve those pains, right? Now the customer's interested in, well, show me and hook me up with other customers that have done the same thing that you're telling me I can do. Okay, they need information from you. So now you're in control, right? And that's when in a sales process, things move from unpredictable to predictable because now you're partnered with that customer and they can help you control the rest of the sales process. If you're showing up to a sales process and you don't know what the next step is because you haven't partnered with a customer, you're still in this unpredictable mode. You show up every day to the customer site and you're like, ugh, I have no idea what's going to happen. I could get thrown out of this thing. You know, I don't understand why I have enemies. I don't know if I'm talking to the economic buyer. I don't know if I'm talking to a coach or maybe a champion. But once you've partnered with that customer, they know and they're working together with you. They're giving you information and you're basically mapping out the next steps of the sales process. It's turned from unpredictable to predictable. You're in control. Now you're basically locking out the competition. But if you're showing up and you're deep into the sales process by 2 or 3 months and you still don't know what's going to happen, you're not in control. Competition's in control.
The champion of the competitor is eating
maybe
you.
the competition hasn't shown up yet, but the customer hasn't bought in. So they're not leading you and holding your hand and walking hand in hand with you down the rest of the sales process.
Yeah, or that is usually a sign that there's no urgency or that there's no big business impact.
Right, they haven't bought in because you haven't asked the right questions.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
You don't really understand their pain. You don't really understand how they're measured. You haven't asked the right questions. And that all goes to MEDDICC.
Yeah, and you're going from reaction to anticipation, away from reacting in the sales process to I'm anticipating what is happening because I have this sales GPS. Let me ask you a different question then about MEDDICC, because there's a lot of people that are listening to this that will say, okay, John is so bought into MEDDICC, of course, because he's one of the people that have basically, it's his thing, right? Now Jiri is also all
I don't care. I don't get any money from MEDDICC.
Yeah, I know. Shame for you, yeah? So, and now Jiri is also speaking about MEDDICC and he's also so positive about it. So, what would need to change in the market? How does the customer behavior or buying process would need to change? So you would say, okay, we would need to adapt MEDDICC, or there would be some, I don't know, other iterations.
Well, you might
necessary.
adapt it depending upon your product. If your product is a commodity or you're selling inside sales and it's really more of a high rate and high pace, you really only can do small deals because of the type of product that you have. Yes, certainly you're going to adjust, MEDDICC to understand, what information do I really need in order to get, evolve into the next step of the sales process. But I think this always goes back. Most of the people listening, I have to believe, love some sort of sport. Do they really think that the coach of the team doesn't have a playbook and doesn't understand, what knowledge you need to have and what skill set you need to have in each stage of the sales process? Because a great coach, like in hockey, there are 4 lines, right? And each line lasts, 45 seconds, maybe a minute?
Minute.
Then they're hopping over the wall. And me as a coach, as a hockey coach, I need to watch Jiri, David Pasternak, David Krejci, all those guys, and understand very quickly, why are they over there on the ice? That's not the play we're running. And how come he couldn't catch the puck? He's got a skill issue. And I take him back, and instead of being on the second line, I demote him to the 4th line.
Yeah.
And now he has to sit there and think about what they did wrong. But they know the playbook, and they know what they need to execute. And the coach now helps them, in practice on, hey, here's what happened on that play, and here's the skill set that you need to execute that. That's no different than understanding where somebody is in a sales process and understanding where they are in the sales process and why things are going right or wrong, and helping them develop that skill set and understand the knowledge.
Yeah.
So if you don't buy into sports and don't think you think these people are running around without a playbook and without a coach that's trying to help develop them, then you will never buy into MEDDICC.
No coach will send out the team without having a strategy. It's like, hey guys, we are playing a game today. Let's have fun. Let's go out and shoot some goals or shoot some pucks, whatever. Yeah. But with no strategy, that's not happening. Professionals are prepared. Professionals have a strategy. Professionals anticipate. Professionals have a plan, and they have maybe even different options depending on what happens, and they react.
Right.
So there must be a strategy. There must be a process. I totally agree. Now, one last thing about MEDDICC, I promise.
Okay.
I think it's
I'm worn out.
It's
from MEDDICC.
easy. It's easier to implement MEDDICC if you are starting your company or your sales team completely from scratch. If you are an established company, let's say you are 5 years on the market, you have, I don't know, 50 sales reps, and you have never been using a qualification methodology before, you're trying to somehow change the tires on a driving car. It seems to me, it's harder to implement MEDDICC after you build up some momentum than from scratch.
I disagree.
So? Disagree? Okay.
Yeah.
What do you think? What is your?
Well, when I was at
take on that
Bladelogic,
then?
we got taken over by BMC, which had been in business probably 25 years. And we took over a much bigger sales
So how have you
force.
done that?
And we
Because a
went
lot of
and
companies
implemented
struggle. A lot of companies struggle with that. Implement it afterwards. So
Well,
how did you do that?
It has to be part of things you do every day. So if somebody's, giving you're basically in a forecast session and you get up there and talk about a deal and I ask you a couple questions just based upon MEDDICC and you can't answer the question and you're forecasting, take it off the forecast. Now, let's say that was a 100K deal and you're forecasting 300. I tell you, you got to take that off the forecast, but you got to find another 100K deal because that thing's not qualified. You say, why is it not qualified? I specifically mention the different MEDDICC things that you're missing and the information you're missing and the people you're not speaking to, get it off and you don't understand the process or the paper process, how long it takes. Maybe there's a month to go in the quarter and you're telling me that you don't understand the paper process and you haven't met the economic buyer. What if the paper process is 8 weeks? How are you going to possibly get that deal in 4 weeks, especially if you never met the economic buyer? Take it off the forecast. How many times are you going to let me take your deals off the forecast before you start to say, maybe I need to learn, why this is not working for me? Maybe I need to understand my process a little bit better and where I am in my process.
So you say it needs to be
So it has to
deeply
be
embedded.
part of your thing. So even in the forecast, if you had a spreadsheet, when you first get up there, all I have to do is basically ask you on the deal, okay, you're going to talk about ABC deal. What's the value driver? And when you can't answer the question as to why they have to buy, and then I ask why they have to buy from you and why they have to do it now, and you can't answer that, I don't even need to go into MEDDICC. I just say, take it off the forecast. Now, if you can even answer those questions, now I start to ask you some questions about MEDDICC, and I tell you to take it off the forecast. And you may argue, but when it doesn't come in, maybe you say, I'm going to prove John wrong, and I'm going to still try to get the deal, and you don't get the deal. How many quarters are you going to go through that before you start to say, maybe there is something to this?
Mm-hmm.
But you need a leader that's trying to build in that type of discipline into the sales force.
Yeah. And you need a leader that knows how to use MEDDICC, that can teach you all the ins and outs and the and the roadblocks.
Can't just be some checklist.
It can't be just Google it and read 2 blog articles and now I'm using MEDDICC. That's not working like that. And most people are doing that. You mentioned a word that I find in your vocabulary very often, qualify. So let's be quickly about your book. The word qualification and qualify is one of the most commonly used words in your vocabulary, it seems.
Yeah.
I think to John Kaplan, you said once in an interview I listened to, said, to be successful, you need to be a voracious qualifier.
Right.
Maniacal qualifier. And your book is also called Qualified Sales Leader. You could have called it Successful Sales Leader. It's Qualified Sales Leader. So tell me, what makes the word qualify for you so special?
I think it starts with me or any person. When you're doing something, you have to ask yourself, you have to qualify yourself. Why am I doing what I'm doing? And if it's not leading to the solution or the goal that I want to get to, then why are you doing it? So throughout the entire day, you should be asking yourself, why am I doing what I'm doing? And at the end of the day, when you're driving home from work, you should ask yourself, what did I accomplish today? What did I really do today that led towards my goal? Whether it's the sales process, which we've talked about a lot right now, you're qualifying every step of the sales process. You're qualifying your sales reps. You're qualifying yourself. If it's recruiting, you're qualifying people, right? If you're talking to the customer and you're just in a customer conversation and they say something, you have to ask, well, why? How come? I don't understand. So you're constantly qualifying. If you're really a good listener and you really want to understand why am I doing what I'm doing, whether it's just you throughout the day or you in the sales process or you recruiting or interviewing customers, any of those things, you're qualifying all the time.
Qualifying your fiance, qualifying your wife.
Well, that sounds like a personal issue.
Qualifying. No, I understand. So you're always, so qualification for you means, why am I doing what am I doing?
Yes. Don't you ask yourself that sometimes? Why did I do that? Why am I doing what I'm doing?
Yes, I think you're asking yourself.
Because humans can just go off track so easily. I mean, we have to constantly understand, why am I doing what I'm doing?
Yeah.
Am I wasting my time?
Is this the right?
Working towards a goal?
Is this the right investment for me?
Yes.
Is my time maybe spent better with something else?
Right.
Is this the right opportunity?
Is it the right opportunity for me? Should I be going someplace else? I want to hear no from the customer. I want to hear no early so I can get out of there and go someplace else.
Yes.
Improve my productivity. I don't want to hang on to an account for months and not understand if I'm winning.
Yeah.
Don't you always ask yourself, am I winning or am I losing? There's only two options here.
Yeah.
You're either winning or you're losing, especially in sales, and especially in a game.
Yeah.
Football game, a hockey game. Am I winning or am I losing? And what am I going to do to change the outcome? It's always qualification.
And most salespeople are really good at lying to themselves and having a fantasy pipeline.
Yes.
That they are dragging from quarter to quarter, and there is no one that is qualifying them as a sales leader. And that's why there's a convoluted pipeline, and you can't forecast. You don't know how many reps you can hire.
That's why you see deals that are on the forecast, and then when do they disappear? Within 2 weeks.
When you change CRM system.
Well, yeah, they disappear within about 2 weeks at the end of the quarter. Yeah. Definitely with 2 days to go at the end of the quarter, they all disappear because they were never qualified. But if they're qualified, you're actually helping your sales reps. If with 12 weeks to go, you're qualifying those deals off the forecast. Get them off the forecast. They're not qualified. Get it off. You're allowing your sales reps to go ahead and work on deals that have a opportunity to close. Mm-hmm. If you're waiting and you're just believing what they say, and then with 2 days to go in the quarter, your forecast collapses. You're not helping yourself, and you didn't help your sales reps.
Yeah. Yeah. Then what you mentioned as a last word, sales rep, is actually the last topic I would like to touch upon with you.
The last one.
You have a passion for
this is going to be over?
Words. No.
I'm having so much fun.
Naples is a wonderful place, and I want to stay for us a bit longer. So you have a passion for sales reps. You have passion for developing sales reps.
Yes.
That's why I think you like to work with startups where you still can mold the process, mold the people as well. I think the biggest bottleneck in sales or for sales organizations is to find good sales reps, find talent, train and retain them, and don't lose them, or apparent attrition. I think that a lot of sales organizations or sales teams are losing on, or maybe passing on sales gems or talent. They are not seeing the talent because they are asking the wrong questions or looking for the wrong things. I think you have a very specific perspective on how to qualify a potential sales rep. So what are you looking for in a sales rep? And how do you find proof for it, let's say in an interview or in a CV?
Mm-hmm. Good question. So I think that if you look at people, there's probably 4 categories. They have knowledge, they have skills, which we've talked about a lot, right? They have the knowledge of the game and the skill set to execute the game. They have a resume or a CV that says what their background is, and then they have characteristics. And most people hire based upon the fact that somebody might come out of a certain domain and have certain knowledge, but it doesn't mean that they actually have the skill set to execute. For instance, if you take somebody that's always sold a commodity, but now you put them where they have to ask the right discovery questions and qualify, they may not be able to have that skill set. And in a CV or in a resume, what does it really tell you? It doesn't really tell you anything. It tells you that they had certain jobs. It doesn't really tell you how much knowledge that they really have, and it tells you nothing about their skill set, and it certainly tells you nothing about their characteristics. So I believe that you hire based on characteristics. So what characteristics are really important? One, if you're super intelligent, you're going to pick up the knowledge that I give you. If you're super driven, super competitive, you have what I call a PhD, persistence, heart, and desire, then you're going to gain the skills that you need to gain, because those take hundreds and hundreds of repetitions, right? After that, then I look for things like, are you coachable and are you adaptable? Because there's people that are coachable. They'll say, yes, John, tell me, I need to get better. I really need to get better. And you keep coaching them and coaching them and coaching them, and they never get better. It's now because they're not adapting. They're not really looking in the mirror in the morning and go, you know what? I really need to change. I need to adapt. You know, things are moving past me and people are moving past me. You know, I have to change the knowledge that I have, and I have to change my skill set, and I have to go to work and do that. And then I'm looking for integrity. You know, as a sales leader, I don't need you to lie to me or tell me things that I'm going to find out later are wrong. I need you to have high integrity. I have a saying that bad news can't wait. I want to know the bad news right now. And if you give me the bad news right now about an account, that gives me the opportunity to help you change things now and give you an opportunity to get that deal in by the end of the quarter. If you're spinning the ball on me, meaning that you're kind of lying to me, telling a half truth, then there's no way for me to help you. And then when I find out, eventually I'll find out that you were lying to me or a half truth. You can only do that to me so many times before I'm going to say, look, we need to part ways, right? So I think those are really important things: intelligence, drive, coachability, adaptability, and integrity. And now there's other characteristics I'd love to have, but if I can get those 4 with a little, I'll even take somebody that's less experienced than somebody that's been selling for 20 years, but doesn't have those characteristics, or lost a little bit of their drive because they've been around too long, think they know everything. They don't want to adapt anymore because I know everything. I've been selling for 20 years. You can keep that guy. I'll take the person that's only got 3 or 4 years experience, but they're highly intelligent, really driven, they're coachable, they're adaptable, and they have high integrity, and I'll be able to give them the knowledge they want and help develop their skills. Because when I'm developing their skills, I know in the background at night, they're developing their own skills too, because that they're driven. They don't want to fail.
What again PhD stands for? It's drive,
persistence,
heart, and
desire.
Persistence, heart, and desire. You said a lot of
which
things.
I think is almost more important than knowledge. Let's say somebody's intelligent on a scale of 1 to 10, they're a 6 or a 7, but their drive is off the charts. I'll take that person over the person that's a 10. They're Isaac Newton, but their drive is a 2. I have no use for that person.
Yeah. Drive.
They're never going to adapt. They're never going to gain, as my company grows, they're never going to gain the new skills that they need. They might be smart enough to understand what it is they need to do, but they don't know how to do it.
I think from all of those that you mentioned, I have a background so I've been in my career 6-7 years in a sales management, sales leader role. I led teams from 5 to 25 people. I haven't been a CRO, but I work very closely with sales reps, and I've been always hiring my own sales reps back in the days. And the number one trait I was always looking for was drive.
Yeah.
Because I knew that if this person has drive and at least some level of intelligence, this person will do everything to learn what this person needs to learn to be successful. So if I go out on the street and I ask 10 people, hey, are you driven? Everyone say, yeah, of course I'm driven, right? Everyone is driven, right?
Yeah, of course.
But we all know that not everyone is driven, or there is from either you are 1 on drive, or 10 or 5 or 6, there's different, different range. So how do you find proof this person is driven, not just by asking, hey, are you driven?
Well, I like to ask a couple questions. I might ask, what's the most difficult situation you've ever been in your entire life? And they'll say in business, and I go, no, your whole life. And you have to be prepared when you ask that question, because you can get some pretty astounding answers. So I've had people that were in head-on collisions. They were driving, they went off the lane, and they smashed head-on to people and killed them, and they broke their legs, and they were in the hospital for a year, but then they survived, and they were driven. Or I had a high platform diver, the divers from what is that, like 10-meter platform, hit his head. They thought he was paralyzed and would never dive again. Super competitive at the highest college level, and fought his way back and was a competitive athlete again. So I look for, those types of stories, but you have to be prepared because some of the answers you get, I've had people crying in my office, and, but what you're doing is you're asking questions that are getting inside. You're not asking superficial questions. You're asking questions that allow you to get inside that person and understand how they think, and where does that drive come from? Is it because you grew up really poor and you want to make something of yourself? Is it, why do you have a certain chip on your shoulder? It could be like I had one guy that his father was very successful in oil and gas, very successful. And the father wanted him to go into oil and gas. So he went into sales. So his father used to look at him and say, okay, just tell me what bar you're going to be bartending in, because you're never going to be successful as a salesperson. Even though his father was wealthy, he wanted to blaze his own path. So with that chip on his shoulder, and his father always asking him, just tell me which bar you're going to be bartending in. He basically used that fire to drive himself, and now he's a CRO at a company, So I'm looking for those types of stories and that type of drive. But in interviewing in general, you can't just ask these superficial questions. You have to dig inside the person's mind and understand how they think. And that's the most important thing with interview.
One thing that keeps coming up in this conversation, and honestly in every high-performing sales org, is the need for a structured and repeatable system. Most deals don't fall through because of the product. They fall through because we missed something critical. We didn't quantify the pain, we never reached a real economic buyer, and we thought we had a champion, but we didn't. Why? Because there's no scalable sales system in place. And that's exactly what I train sales teams on with the software sales formula, on structured frameworks and discovery, not just to tick the boxes in a CRM, but to understand how to run a deal in the right way, from discovery with systems to close with clarity and control. If you want your team to stop losing deals they should be winning, then check out softwaresalesformula.com. It's softwaresalesformula.com, or check out the link down below in the show notes. And now let's get back to the episode.
Because most people or most interviewers or sales managers, they asked, hey, so what have you done at this company? What was your role at X?
Like, what did you sell? How much money? What was your quota?
Exactly.
All these questions that are not going to tell you anything about the person's characteristics.
Heart.
Yeah, they're hard. Like, what's the most competitive thing you've ever done?
Yeah.
And now, after you ask that question, you got to, do your own discovery and get inside their head. Figure out what drives them. What drives you now? Where do you want to be? Why do you want to do that? And you got to see through we're talking to salespeople, so you got to see through some of the BS or the bullshit and figure out, look through the facade.
Yeah.
But again, if you're in the moment, you're not trying to do 5 other things, you're in the conversation with the interviewee, you're going to do well by listening.
John,
which is a skill that is the most underrated skill in sales. Most people are really, really bad listeners.
Mm. Is there a way to learn it?
Keep your mouth shut. Keep your ears open. And be in the moment. I think what happens these days with people, I think, are in a constant state of, like
partial attention.
Partial attention. Yeah. Right. Very good. And, we got alerts going off on the phone. The phone's ringing. You know, we have people talking to us, we're listening to the radio. There's a whole bunch of things that we're doing at the same time. And we don't really live in the moment. And if you're not here physically and emotionally, then you can't really listen. And you can't really have intuition, really intuit what Jiri's really saying to me or asking me right now, because I'm not really here. Then I can't intuit. And then I can't really listen. I can't be in the conversation. So that's why listening is a really underrated skill. And I think a lot of the best salespeople are the best listeners. And because they're the best listeners, going back to your earlier point, they're the best qualifiers. They really are.
Because they can ask the best questions.
They can ask the best questions, and they're very secure in themselves. I used to have a guy sell for me. He's no longer with us on this earth, but his name was Carlo Carpinelli in Italy. And he only called on the CEOs of the biggest companies in Italy, Ferrari, GD, Ducati. Every time I went on sales calls with him, we're calling at the CEO level. But if there were, enemies in the account when we'd go on other meetings, and they would basically try to throw rocks at our product or our company, he was so curious and such a good listener and so secure in himself, he would just look at the person and go, but why? Why do you say that? And he was really genuine in trying to understand, not defend himself. He really wanted to understand, why is that person saying what they're saying? Why? How come? So then he could respond. But he was an amazing listener, very secure in himself. And that's why he was like the #1 salesperson in the world.
I believe I heard that story once. I think there was even a situation where you gave him some coaching and he couldn't wait and went back to the customer and asked the question again or something.
Yeah, I
like
wrote
that?
it in the book. We made all day sales calls in Ferrari. And we come out and it's starting to turn to dusk. And the cars are all leaving, and I'm looking at these nice cars that are leaving. And Carlo said, or asked me, how do you think it went? And I said, well, here's what we now know, but now here's the things we don't know. And as I was looking at some of the cars, Carlo turned and was walking back in the front door of Ferrari. And I said, where are you going? And he goes, I'm going back inside to get the answers to your questions in Italian because I could do it faster. Now, most sales reps would have taken me in the car after all day in Ferrari and drove me, and we go to dinner, and then maybe they set up meetings over the course of the next 2 weeks to go get the answers to those questions. For Carlo, who had this incredible curiosity, it would drive him crazy to drive home. So he had to go get the answers to the questions now and come back. And that's what was another reason he was one of the best salespeople, because he was constantly getting that information now, not waiting to get it over the course of the next couple of weeks. So he was shortening his sales cycles, and he was always talking to the right people. Amazing.
Because time kills deals.
Time does kill deals.
Time kills deals. Hey, John, what would be the best way that if people want to connect with you, find out more about you, maybe, read your book or get more connected with you and with your way of thinking?
Well, they could buy the book.
They could buy the book.
They could listen to it on an audiobook.
Yeah.
They can listen to a podcast weekly podcast I do with a guy named John Kaplan, who runs Force Management, called the Revenue Builders. And on that podcast, all I try to do is educate salespeople. I don't make any money from it. It takes up a lot of time, but all we try to do is educate salespeople. So Revenue Builders podcast on Spotify or Apple or whatever they want.
Wherever you listen to your podcast.
Wherever you listen
Revenue
to your
Builders.
favorite podcast. Yeah.
So I always ask my guests a final question.
Uh-oh.
And for you, I have a very special final question.
Okay.
My
favorite hockey team?
No, yeah, I know that already. I know that it's Boston Bruins. They're not doing that well these days. So, but I think you left a dent in the software sales world, definitely in a sales world as well. What is the impact that you want to have on the sales world?
No, I think it goes back to the reason I do the podcast, the reason I wrote the book is you don't really make any money off of any of that, is to give back. So, I mean, I was successful. I had some people that I learned from. I didn't really have any one mentor, but I would kind of steal stuff from everyone. So I feel like everything that I learned, by listening to people and then go ahead and being coachable and adaptable. And all I really want to do is just give back to people. So that's why I'm doing this podcast. That's why I do my own podcast. And that's why I wrote the book, just to give back. Yeah, that's it. Help other people get what they want. And that's why I coach people even in startups, is because I'm trying to help other people get what they want. And there's joy in that. Maybe that sounds cliche, but there is joy in that. We're seeing the people that you led. Now, I mean, one guy counted that there's over 200 CROs that used to work for me that are now CROs. There's some joy in that, knowing that. Because a lot of people think that when you leave a company and then they think, well, I left the company and the company failed. Well, then I think you were a shitty leader because you didn't develop anybody underneath you. It should be like when you leave, there's other people that can take your spot, right? And it's, I think, the same in life. When you leave this life, how many people did you leave behind that could now do things that you did because you helped them get what they want? That's important.
You want to make yourself indispensable, kind of.
No, I don't need to be indispensable, but I need to help people get what they want.
So they can self-sufficiently.
Yes, they don't
without
need me.
your help.
That's the sign of great leadership. Great leadership isn't where you still have to hold their hands. That means you haven't developed them. But the sign of great leadership is when, let's say I have 10 people working for me, every one of them doesn't need me anymore. That means I did all I could possibly do.
Leaving a dent on the sales world by, getting other people, helping other people to get what they want.
Yes, sir.
So thanks for getting me what I wanted and getting you on the podcast.
All right.
So thanks for being on the show.
That was a tough sale, but you were a good sales guy.
That was a tough sale. I was chasing you down, I think, for 1.5 or 2 years.
I didn't know who this Jiri guy was.
Yeah, from Czech Republic.
From the Czech Republic.
From the ice hockey nation.
Yeah.
Hey, John, it was a pleasure. Thanks for having you on the show.
Thanks a lot.
And when we're back in Vienna, then we do a second session.
All right.